What's up, guys? Today we're going to be talking a bit more about the Restrict Act. Now, if you still aren't aware about what this is, go ahead and watch the video that I made about it a few days ago, where I go through all of these sections of the bills trying to translate the legalese into plain English. And I'll leave that in the cards or video description. But today I'm going to give you guys a bit of a white pill, as the kids say, because these goofy ass restrictions that the Restrict Act would implement are mostly unenforceable. So to make a really short summary of this proposed bill, it basically grants the Secretary of Commerce the legal authority to review any transaction that you make with a foreign entity, and they define an entity as any kind of business group, and even several non-business groups are defined as entities as well. And understand that when they talk about restricting transactions with foreign adversaries, they aren't just talking about you purchasing something from a Chinese company, okay? A transaction doesn't mean money necessarily in this context, but any kind of digital communication. Remember, protecting the children from TikTok is the sheep's clothing that this wolf of a bill is wearing to trick people into supporting it. What this bill ultimately does is just give the Secretary of Commerce the authority to decide if your online communications are illegal or not. Now, there's a number of issues with this, the biggest one being the centralization of power. Gina Raimondo is the current Secretary of Commerce, so these decisions will be up to her from now. But next year, when America has its next election, we could see the Secretary of Commerce change. So the way that this law is going to be enforced, or at least the ways that it could be interpreted, could change each time the president does, or really each time the Secretary of Commerce changes, which tends to be with presidential changes since the Secretary of Commerce is part of the president's cabinet. Now, of course, some things would remain the same when the Secretary of Commerce changes, if this were to pass. China, Cuba, Iran, they're all going to be adversaries of the US for decades to come, so that's not going to change. But the shiftiness of this law, or at least the shiftiness in the possible interpretations, is a big reason that this law is going to be so difficult to actually enforce. One day your communications are perfectly legal, and then the next they need to be restricted. Now, the main reason that this cannot be enforced is the same reason why so many other laws about what you can and can't do on the internet, like in the case of torrenting, if you were doing that without a VPN connection in a country that actually cares about people torrenting copywritten content, then Disney or whoever owns that content might try to sue you. But if you're using a VPN, I haven't seen any cases where people have been sued or really even gotten those DMCA letters when they're changing their IP address through a VPN. Now, funny enough, the people who are writing the Restrict Act actually thought about this, and they decided to put in an even harsher punishment for people who are caught trying to use a VPN to mitigate these restrictions. Those people could face up to 20 years in prison and or a $1 million fine. Now, VPNs themselves are not being banned altogether. That would be ridiculous. Lots of people need to use VPNs every single day for their work. Say if you have a remote position for a corporate job, you're probably going to connect to their VPN from your remote location. So it's only going to be illegal to use your VPN to do illegal things, just like how it's already illegal to use a VPN to torrent copywritten content. But again, just like that torrenting, it's unenforceable. The whole point of a VPN is that it encrypts all of your traffic. It tunnels it through to a remote server, and then whatever service you're ultimately connecting to, whether this is the torrent swarm or whether this is TikTok or whatever, all they're gonna see is the IP address of your VPN. And in theory, the owner of the VPN isn't keeping any logs, and if we assume that this lack of logs is true, that means the only way that the government will know you're using a VPN to access TikTok or whatever banned content is if you misconfigure your VPN and your real IP ends up connecting to the banned service. But this is becoming less and less likely as the knowledge of how to use a VPN becomes more and more common, and VPN companies start developing more foolproof apps for people to use. The only other method, which would be a lot more difficult for the government to pull off, would be for them to compromise the VPN company's servers in some way. Maybe they go and send glowies to infiltrate the data centers that these servers are in, and they reconfigure them to store logs. But like I said, this is difficult to pull off because the glowies, well, you can see them when you're driving. The most realistic approach for enforcing this, which is something that the government is doing already with all encrypted traffic that's flowing through the internet, is to just store all of these encrypted packets. And then when quantum computers become more accessible, the government can start decrypting this massive trove of encrypted data. And then they will be able to see that you used a VPN to connect to TikTok back on May of 2023 or whatever. Now, like I said, the governments, they're already engaged in this practice of store now, decrypt later, because they can see all of the traffic that's flowing through the internet. It's just if it's encrypted, they can't see the actual contents of this traffic. So it is a possibility that your encrypted traffic, which would be made illegal under this bill, will be decrypted and revealed one day. But the key word here is one day. When will that day be? Well, currently, IBM has the most powerful quantum computer with 433 qubits. Good for them. But just like how we saw CPUs double in power each year, we're probably going to start seeing the exact same thing with the number of qubits. Pretty soon, we're going to have 1,000, 2,000, 4,000, and so on in a quantum computer. But once these things exist, someone is going to have to start putting in some work making them decrypt all this traffic. And I have a feeling that your TikTok sessions are going to be towards the bottom of that pile of encrypted data that the feds are going to want to put their fancy new quantum computers to work decrypting. There's decades of terrorist activity that they're probably going to want to look at. There's gang activity, military communications, corporate secrets, and all kinds of juicy stuff to decrypt. Plus, you've got to remember that governments won't just be using this against you. They're going to be using it against each other. Remember, this is all about stopping our adversaries. Well, when our adversaries get a quantum computer that can break the encryption that we've been using to store our communications, that of course they have captured from the internet as well, there's going to be a lot of chaos going on when they have their RSA breakers. And I really doubt that your illegal TikTok traffic is going to be a priority for anyone. But let's say that you yourself are a person of interest, and maybe, just maybe, the feds are going to prioritize your traffic for decryption. Right behind Osama bin Laden's DMs, they're going for your traffic. All right, well, you should really start looking into using quantum resistant encryption yourself right now, because it is available. This is something that I've been looking into a little bit, doing a little bit of research on it. Since all asynchronous encryption algorithms are definitely going to be broken at some point in the future. So there's VPN services that have quantum safe VPN tunnels available right now. Mulvid has several servers available with this feature. And it's also probably the most trusted VPN company in terms of privacy. If you wanted to set up your own post-quantum WireGuard VPN, you could use something like RosinPress to do that. So in summary, these new laws that the Restrict Act would create, they're not actually going to stop any criminals. They're not going to stop our foreign adversaries, as the act calls them. This act would probably only see little old grandmas who don't know about VPNs being punished for watching cute cat videos on TikTok. And that's just wrong, because watching videos of kitties is the primary purpose of the internet.